when you're at home and you have children of different ages and ability levels, your worst need is structure.
Welcome to Classical Etc. You're in the studio with Memoria Press.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Classical Etc. I'm Jessica Gardner Abood, new last name, back from the wedding. Glad to be back, though.
And it was a very nice wedding.
Yes, you were
did
there.
a great job.
Thank you. I'm here with
Great
Paul
job saying
Schaefer.
yes.
Yes, it was so wonderful. Carrie McGraw and Martin Cawthron. Yeah, it's good to be back. But while I've been gone, a lot has happened. School has started.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, has anybody had time to be reading anything?
Well, since I don't teach, the fact that school is going on has no effect on me whatsoever.
Not even the college?
Well, yeah, you should have more time now that your college classes are over.
Right.
Yeah, your college classes are over.
Yeah, most of that work's done before it starts, right? So I actually, and Dan Scheffler, our philosophy professor at Memoria College, he was reading Portrait of a Lady by Henry James. And I thought, we really need to do another podcast. And so I thought, well, which we do on books. And I thought, well, I need to try that. And I've read two Henry James books before, Washington Square and Daisy Miller, which are very short ones. And then I tried The Golden Bowl, and it was a slog, the first part of it, and I just gave it up. So I went ahead with Portrait of a Lady, and I really like it. And of course, Henry James is just famous for the precision of his language. There's nobody whose language is more precise. When you read some writers, there's like I always think of it as there's a lot of meaning leakage from the language, and it just doesn't hold in very well. But there is no leakage in Henry James' writing. Everything is exactly what he wants to say, and he says it exactly the way he means it. And so I'm just 4 or 5 chapters in, but I'm already enjoying that.
I'm so happy to hear you say that, because that's actually literally on my shelf right now, the next one that I want to read.
Portrait of a Lady?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
It really is. And I did just finish a book with our homeschool book club. And we just had our discussion sessions online last night, and it was Lilies of the Field by Warren Barrett. It is, it's a sweet little book. It's what we needed. We were refreshed and energized and just inspired by this sweet story of a young, very strong, a Black man coming out of the South, having left the army, and he is traveling out west, and he meets a group of German nuns who, through faith, are determined that they're going to build a chapel, and he's going to build it for them. And he gets sideswiped by this experience, and it's funny. It's, like I said, lighthearted. We just completely enjoyed it, especially coming off of Anna Karenina.
Yes.
So, and we've got our next one. So we just finished that. We got our next one lined up is The Great Divorce for this group. And that'll be the September read. And then October is going to be To Kill a Mockingbird. And so, I kind of stuck a couple little less serious books
and Lilies
in
of the
there.
Field, the movie, which Sidney Poitier starred in, and I have not read the book, but I did see the movie, and the movie is really good.
So there's a bunch of us on the homeschool book club group that are now going to be watching that movie this weekend because one of them found it on a streaming device, and so I've not seen the movie, but.
Did it win an Academy Award?
I think he did. I think if it didn't, I think he did.
Yeah, there was awards for something in that movie. Yeah, it was highly acclaimed.
Yes.
But I would highly recommend the book. Martin, you'll get it done in a day. Is it that short? Is it like it's 127 pages. It's really a novella. Yes. It's just, like I said, light and lighthearted.
Yeah, there's not a lot that goes on in the movie. I mean, it's not a action-packed sort of thing. So I could see that being done in 127 pages.
It's just a gem. It's truly a gem, and an easy one too.
Because you hear about the movie, but you don't hear about the book.
Right. But the book is so worthy.
Yeah, okay.
And it's usually the case.
I'm curious after you watch the movie.
I'll come back and let you know.
Yeah, how different it is.
Yeah, this is a long weekend, so I should be able to fit a movie in.
Yeah. And how can somebody join or ask about the book club that you do?
So I post the book club and sign up for the book club on all of our social media.
Okay.
And I think I put it on the forum too.
Okay.
But anybody can just email me, homeschool@memoriapress.com. And I've got people that come in late. So if somebody wants to come in for the September read of The Great Divorce, or even just the October, come on in.
Okay.
We'll get that done and get everybody signed up and registered. And then they start receiving emails.
Perfect.
So,
Okay.
yep.
Speaking of book clubs, though, we mentioned The Chosen that we were doing at Memoria Press, and Tanya said we should do an episode on this. Well, I have my copy. I haven't read a word of it. I have gotten very little reading done at all, between kids starting school and having to get homework routines down and the farm and a new exercise regimen for me. Personal exercise regimen.
All right,
I did not know this.
I used to joke that I did cardio once a year, and that was when I got new pigs, and they would bust out of the fence.
Well, I was going to say, why would you never hear of farmers needing an exercise
regimen?
routine?
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. It's just I got motivated by one of my friends, and he's running races, and I said, you know what, I'll do one with you. So I signed up for a 10K in like a month and a half. So I got to get moving. But I made this nice path on the outside of all my fields. So like I get to run, look at the cows, check on the grass growing, make sure all the animals where they need to be.
Multitask.
Yeah. and then get some, I mean, you got to be healthy in body and mind, right? So like make sure that body's healthy. And so I just I have not had time in my recent, schedule to get some reading done.
Sounds
it needs
like
to happen, but
You're forgiven.
thanks, Carrie.
But I appreciate the reality check, the acknowledging that there's seasons when you just can't open that book. It's okay. It's all right, Paul.
Yeah. I get a little bit of reading done at work, but I don't get anything done at home. And that's normally what I try to talk about is stuff I have to get done at home. So.
Well, on to today's topic. There are many methods and systems for educating your child. And I think it's safe to say that not all of them are successful. Not all of them serve children in their development. So today we're going to talk about some of those systems and methods and put them beside the Memoria Press method and see how they compare. And Carrie, I want to start with you because you field questions all day long.
So do our CSRs. I'm not the only one.
They absolutely do. You hear from families coming out of a variety of programs, and they're interested in what we have to offer. What are some of the most common ones you're hearing about lately that people are leaving?
Oh, that is such a multifaceted question, Jessica, because it's really an emotional thing that's happening to families. And we are coming out of, and we're still reeling and experiencing the emotions coming out of, the big event, in 2020. And there was so much that went on during that time, such an exodus from systems. Okay. And in that time, so many parents discovering what the system wasn't doing for their children. And while that has kind of leveled off, families still wear those scars. So the question you ask is really a very emotional question for a lot of families. But the families today, right now, it's really the same thing, but it's not at the same magnitude. They're discovering that the system, whatever it is, isn't serving their child. They're not reading. They're getting pushed along. They don't know any math facts. One of the other things that I'm observing now, God bless our young parents, is that they're in the same boat. I'm now seeing parents that are from a system in which they didn't have spelling or grammar or math facts, or, even they feel behind now. And so when they come and they discover Memoria Press, it is like a light. It is just a light upon their lives, and something that they're so excited to be able to journey with their children and learn themselves. It is such a common comment. I didn't get this. I didn't get this. And So there's still out there, systems that parents are discovering, my child's not being served and I have to make a change. And then they find us, and that's the journey.
And do you find that there are methods now that have been more popular that people are, like you hear phrases like unschooling or things that are maybe less structured. Do you get some of those? Just
let me get my hands on a dear sweet unschooler. Okay. So, that was the terminology. I guess it arrived around the late 80s. Maybe Martin, you would, remember as such. And it hung on. But, do I find that what they're looking for? It's amazing how many are now looking for classical education.
Okay.
It's really amazing. I think the wider world out there of homeschooling, there's still so many options. Right. You go to any homeschool convention and there's an option for everything, right? But there's something that calls a parent to classical education. We of course think we know what that something is, but they see this goodness. And a lot of parents are craving a structure. They're craving something that says, you can do this in this manner, and this is logical, and it makes sense, and something that takes their day and gives them purpose and a focus. And so much of classical education is, especially through Memoria Press, is naturally designed to do that in the home.
Well, and there's a fundamental assumption in unschooling, and generally, I mean, when you have toddlers in the home, right? They're toddling about. That's what that's what their name comes from. And there's not necessarily a clear structure other than meals and bedtime, right? You may have a little bit more, and parents don't want to give up that precious time, right? When they hit school age, there's this desire of, well, my child's been learning for these past 5 years, just kind of doing their thing, and we want to keep that going, without recognizing that as kids get older, and even small kids, right? They thrive on routine, right? And having that structure and that routine, that does cramp a young adult style who's got young kids that was used to being their free, independent self, and now they've got a spouse and kids that know we need to have a routine. That cramps your style, but it is important for those kids. I mean, I've seen that with our foster kids. The more routine we have, the happier those kids are. And the happier they are, actually, the more they can focus on learning academically. And so that fundamental assumption of unschooling, of like, we don't need the structure, we're completely on the other side of that. And once you embrace that, there's a whole lot of goodness that you start to see come out of the kids and out of the structure.
But also in embracing the routine, you still keep and make room for that unstructured play and that unstructured learning. You just know where things fit and have their place, right? And you give to learning I think we use the word often, gravitas, that it deserves, and you give to play the same thing. Because play is important too. You'll hear me and Michelle and Tanya and all of us say, when you have that young one still, you're K to 2, please play. Please get on the floor with your children and still play. And that is important. But the routine is what gives our children the comfort. Like you say, Paul, they need this. They're craving this. They're craving a dependability in their day and a dependability on the people around them, mom, dad, teacher, and that they know what's coming next. And that's when the day becomes productive, peaceful.
Right. And it goes also lesson to lesson, right? Lesson 1 in one of our books is going to be the same as lesson 2, and the same as lesson 3, and the same as lesson 4. The structure is going to be there. And that's hugely important, because once you go through that first couple of weeks of getting used to whatever the new structure is, then for the next 32 weeks
what success looks like, really, the predictability.
Jessica, if I can comment, I think there's a new form of unschooling that has emerged. And it is it's all video schooling.
Oh.
And I am seeing parents come from this, and or parents comparing us to this, where the entire program that they have that is offered to them is all on video. And the child is sitting in front of a screen all day long.
And it's sold as all the instruction is done by the video instead of by the adult that's next to that child.
That's right. So I have been observing this new form of what I would call unschooling, and that's just my take on it, because then where is the parent? Where is the parent in that equation? And so parents have been removed from that. And once you do that, and I had a conversation with a mom about this just last week, about the rigor that is removed at that point in time. You cannot produce that within an all video program. Videos are useful. Don't get me wrong. We use them.
Right.
But we use them with the understanding of the parent is the primary teacher and the impetus for this learning.
Right. And we highly recommend that parents using our videos are sitting down with the student while they're watching the video and in order to engage with them about that content that's being presented. And the other thing is just, I mean, I'm going back to, I'm going to use my term again, fundamental assumption of the programs that are full video, right? Where they're saying, we're going to do all that instruction for you on a recorded video, and giving the parent this understanding that they don't really have to be that involved.
Right.
The only way a child is going to require themselves to hold the pencil properly, to spell correctly, to form those letters well, is the adult that's right next to them that says, go back and redo that. Go back and redo that. Go back and redo that. Make this your best letter P that you can. P was my worst letter in 8th grade. I just,
You're scarred.
You would think my name is Paul, but no, it was, I had the uppercase P down, but not the lowercase P. So it's so important. It's so important that those kids have that adult that's fully engaged in the material saying, you can do this better. And for as much as I hate the books that our foster children bring home from the school library, there was one that was Miss Pearl and something, but I just read it last night. But it was this story of this girl going to school that wanted to get all A's. And that year she was assigned to be in Mrs. Pearl's class. And she's, imagining Miss Pearl is wearing pearls, all fancy person. She's like, it'll be easy to get A's from this person. Well, Miss Pearl's very demanding. And Miss Pearl keeps saying, you can do better, and keeps giving her low grades and says, you can do better. And she just starts to hate this teacher. And then one day a substitute teacher comes in, and right when she's supposed to be getting a report card, the substitute teacher comes in, and she just starts to love this teacher, I think called Miss Sprinkle or something. And, but then she starts to realize that she's writing more sloppy than she's ever written. She's doing worse work. And then the next day when Miss Pearl comes back and gives her a report card and she's got B's and B pluses, she's so happy with it because she recognized that Miss Pearl was asking her to do the hard things and that she could be better, and calling that child to a higher level than what they would naturally tend towards.
And children know that. They know the difference. They know when they produce the difference. And yet you have some at home that stick their heels in the ground and say, no, I'm not going to do it. Yes, Mom, I know, I've been there. I'm so sorry. But it's so beautiful that that's kind of built into them, that they know this goodness when they see it and they want it. That's what's amazing about Latin and particularly Prima Latina, because it's such a gentle introduction. And yet these children, they light up, at least mine did. They light up in learning something that's so neat, unique, beautiful, and
structured.
And structured, and their own. It's theirs. And that's the beautiful thing about Prima Latina. And then you get into the first forms, of course, but and that would be us. There we are.
Martin, you are constantly in the educational scene. with your conferences and your talks, what are the kinds of things that you're seeing, that you're hearing, like, oh, people are saying this just isn't working, or it's not working and you can?
Well, and I see this not only at conferences, I see it on our Facebook page comments section and this sort of thing. And I've realized that a lot of homeschool parents, they fled the public schools.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what was the problem that you were trying to avoid? And what they think it is the formality and the order and the structure, a lot of them. And I'm thinking, okay, in terms of particularly public school, order is not the problem, okay? It would be a solution, actually, but it's not the problem. And so I think that they're thinking, well, if I free them up and they don't have these shackles that the public schools have been. I mean, what they don't realize is that the whole problem with public schools over the last 100 years is they've taken away the order. Mm-hmm. They no longer, very few public schools have a curriculum at all. I mean, they got some random programs, but they don't have a curriculum. They don't have order in the curriculum. They don't have order in the classroom, right? The whole romanticist influence on education, which has pervaded public schools for the last 100 years, is opposed to a structured classroom, right? So if you think that what you're fleeing is the bad formality and order of the school, then you've got a whole mistaken conception of what the problem is and what the solution is. And so I think this is just a temptation for homeschoolers to think that what they have to do is informalize everything. They're going to informalize the learning process, and this is going to help their children. Well, no, actually. When you're at home and you have children of different ages and ability levels, your worst need is structure. And so I think that one of the ramifications of that is you need a set curriculum worse than a teacher, right? Because they've just got kids of one age and usually similar ability levels and all that stuff. Well, you've got this variety here. You need to whip this into shape somehow. This is not free range education. All right. They're not just supposed to roam around and find. So I think, the romanticist temptation we see in schools, follow your bliss, basically, that's an even worse temptation for homeschoolers. And yes, you want the enjoyment of education, but the enjoyment of education does not come from removing order. You need it worse than anything else. And so that's what I was thinking about when you all were talking about this here. Yeah,
well, and I think you find the enjoyment in education in achieving something that's very difficult, right? But I think when you're talking about this informality, right? Like Carrie and I think we kept talking more about like routines and structure kind of in how it is taught, right? And in like, what's the feeling of the time we're spending versus, and you mentioned this at the tail end, right? Like the structure in the concepts being presented, right? Or the difficulty of the language of the books we're reading, right? And I see this, I see this in spades in our foster kids of like what's being sent home, where what's being sent home with the second grader is actually easier than what's being sent home with the first grader because the teachers aren't actually in communication, right? And so they're pulling from the same book, but the first grader is getting stuff later in the book than the second grader. And, where you have to be so conscious about what's the reading level of my child, and am I putting something in front of my child that's a little bit harder for them to grow, or am I asking them to make a jump of a light year that they can't actually make? Like all of that scaffolding and that progression is so important, right?
And it could feel really daunting to someone who's coming out of, whether they think it's maybe too rigid for what they want, or they're coming out of a school that they felt like was totally chaotic. So they want to try to do it on their own. But knowing that progression would be really hard. Just it would be for me if I was starting from scratch.
Well, and that's another thing that is missing from a lot of schools because, it looks like they're getting back on track on phonics, structured reading. Well, right. But then I just yesterday just read something from the state and their training on reading, and it was this whole big long explanation, and there was no explanation. I could not tell what they were doing. It was just vague, and
Same old.
If a student wrote a paper written this way to me by the education people, I would give it a C at best. I mean, it just didn't explain anything. But I think that order is not just in the curriculum and not just in the structure of the classroom. It's also in the structure of how you teach a particular subject, which is what you're getting to.
Right.
And so you really need a really good structured incremental phonics program. You really need a good structured structured program in arithmetic.
And we attempt to give them all of this. Right. It's almost like macro and micro. In the macro, there is the plan, there is the trajectory, there is the curriculum that we have that was built from the top down. We want a student to get all the way to Dante. Well, we've got to work this back, and where do we start that training? And then in the micro, you're looking at subject matter. Within subject matter, and how we create that progression of learning and skills and needed things and needed content to get them to that next level. And each year is built with the last in mind and the next one in mind. And it goes to Martin's point of there's no curriculum in the system anymore. And it's been years since they've had one, years. And so that word gets thrown around as if they know what a real curriculum is, but it's not. It's exactly what Paul is saying, where the second grader is doing, easier work than what the first grader is, because there's nothing built in the system for that necessary trajectory, macro and micro.
In our program, people can pick it up you help people do this a lot. They can come in there's entry points all over the place.
Entry points all over the place.
And that's the hardest part of getting started, is figuring out, where do I put my child? And because if you're coming out of a school setting, public or private, I don't care, typically the parent that's then getting into homeschooling doesn't have nearly the grasp on what their child's capable of that a homeschooling parent would if they've been homeschooling past year or two, right? And so that's kind of the hardest part, to figure out what they're capable of, where do we place them. But once you're in, then it's a very easy, just moving up to the next level sort of progression.
Yeah, and you will have the ability to monitor where your child is, what you need to be doing right now, because like you say, schools, you could have one class in the second grade that's doing a certain thing, and the other second grade is doing something different, and they're reading books, and it turns out that what you read in second grade, they're going to read again in the third grade, because we don't have a whole picture of all the things. You've got control of that as a homeschooler. You know what Susie's read, and if you say, Susie, read that. I already read that, Mom. Well, then okay, then do this one. And so the personalized attention that a mother can provide is a lot better than what a teacher can provide, because
Amen.
She's trying to keep track of all the kids in her class, and then she's trying to presumably somebody's trying to keep track of what we're doing in each class at this particular school, let alone other schools where they're reading Charlotte's Web in third grade here, and then you move to the other district and your child's in fourth grade and they're reading it in fourth grade over here. It's a mess.
Right. And not only does that mother have that bird's eye view of exactly what her child is doing, can accomplish, and what her child needs, she is the one that is, or dad, they are the ones that are most vested in this. This child is their treasure, their prize. Everything. They want to sink everything into that treasure and that prize. And that's why I said earlier, we're still reeling off of this very emotional time when millions of parents across this nation discovered how their children were not being served, what their children did not know. And so to Paul's point of, yes, we can jump in at any point in time, and your point as well, the other point I want to make about to our homeschoolers is, yes, you can do this.
Mm-hmm.
There is no one who can do this better, quite frankly. Sweet homeschool parents who tell me, but I'm not an educator. I'm saying, honey, I'm a banker. Like, what do you, I mean, no, me either. Yeah. But you are the one that knows your child best and will do the best for your child no matter what. Yes, leave the dishes in the kitchen sink. Just leave them. It's okay. You are the one that is best equipped to serve your children's needs.
You're absolutely right. And we will help. Mm-hmm. We will help. If you need help understanding, I mean, it's interesting being on the parental side of it now, like, and getting homework lists of like, this is what you're supposed to do. And I'm like, I have no idea what that means. And, and then having to go to teacher and say, okay, what does this mean? What am I supposed to be doing here? And that was me getting used to a public school dictate of what I was supposed to be doing. But at the same time, because I'm going to support, I know for those kids in that scenario, it's the best thing for them that I try to support what they're doing. Even though I don't agree with it wholly, I would love them in a wholly different system. Right now, it's what you have to do. It's what I have to do. But I realized it's going to be the same thing for parents jumping into our curriculum. Like the terminology we use, it may be a little differently. You don't know when we say do this exercise, you don't know what that exercise means. Like we are always open. You call us, a person's going to pick up, and we will answer that question for you. If you need help placing, if you need help saying, I don't know if I should start in this book or that book, we can tell you whether it's going to be a big deal or not to do trees and or birds, right? Like all of those sorts of questions we can help you with, because it is daunting. It is daunting to go from whatever you consider you're a professional in a different field, and all of a sudden you're an educator of your own kids, right? And Carrie, your point is they're the ones that love those kids the most. They're the ones that are most invested, absolutely. But they're also the ones that feel the most pressure to do right by these kids. And so it's a lot of weight, a big burden that these parents take on.
And we want to take it on with them.
That's right.
I mean, we want to carry this with them. I mean, you just said this. And actually, we were in my office the other day with a couple of the other guys in my department. And we had said to one of them, no, we're just about the only company left that when you call, you get a human being, and that's a big deal.
Oh my gosh. Don't even get me started.
No robo trees, nothing.
And that's who we are, because we are vested in what our families are choosing to do. And we want to support our families in every single way. And so you're going to get a human being. Yeah. And if that first human being is a CSR that feels like you need a little bit extra help, well, then maybe they send them to me, and we just sit and talk it all through and do exactly what you just said, which is find that fit, really discover what we can bring to that student best and what we can bring to that home that is best.
I love that you mentioned the added support, because while we're talking about methods and systems and specifically what we offer you teacher manuals, lesson plans, books, but we also offer you a lot of additional help. You can truly just call someone and say, okay, I have all the materials, but how do I do it? So, and you have that, you have Memoria Academy. If you get to a point where you're like, there's no way I can teach high school biology to my children, I need somebody else to do that. We've got Memoria College where you say, I want training for myself. I know I'm forgetting other things, but we're not just trying to sell books and support those books. No. We're trying to give any sort of need that we see in this endeavor, give you a way to,
what we're doing right now. This is something I tell parents, shore yourself up, keep yourself immersed in things that support you. Listen to a podcast that's telling you you can do this. Telling you that we want to support you. That's what we're doing, right now. And all the resources that we try to put out and continually to meet the needs and really anticipate the needs of our homeschoolers. I think that's one of the beautiful things that our curriculum manuals do is we do the best we can to anticipate all their needs. and in that curriculum manual. And so I'll tell a parent, please sit down and read that. Could you just get a cup of hot cocoa, please, and just enjoy the book? No, it's not Lilies of the Field, but it's your time. Get in there, be entrenched, get to understand who we are as a company on a mission to save Western civilization one student at a time.
Because everything in those manuals is so intentional.
It's intentional.
When you look at even the paragraphs in the beginning, you think, oh, we put that in there because you're right. It's anticipating, like, you will need to know this. It's not just an empty...
Right. It's not just filler words to make it feel like a full book. But also, there are times where we put stuff in there at the request of homeschoolers. They want some additional American history in 3rd, 4th, 5th grades. We put to the American supplemental readers, right? Like, but that doesn't mean that all of that is essential if you struggle to get it all done.
That's right.
And so if you're like, hey, I don't know what I can cut out and what I can't, call us. Like we can help you understand. Like that's that because one thing I want to say, this whole podcast is one of the things Cheryl would say, like, people overestimate what they can get done in a year and underestimate what they can get done in 5, right? Like that sort of sentiment is that you should see consistent progression, but in a short window, you're not going to see much, right? But if you don't have the long vision of, oh, hey, you know what? Maybe I'm just going to have my kid do everything orally in 2nd and 3rd grades because we're going to work on writing later on. Your 4th grader is really going to struggle with writing. And we can tell you that and let you know that, okay, in 2nd grade, you don't have to do it all in written, but you do need to work towards that, right? So maybe you're doing some oral, some written, and you need to keep increasing that writing because you want that child to be a fluent writer by 7th, 8th grades, right? They need to be able to write page 2 essays and scale up in high school. So, like if you have any questions about that sort of thing in the curriculum, because if you struggle to get it all done, we can give you parameters.
This is why gardening is so important. And I hate to use organic metaphors here because we get into the romanticist thing again. But what do you do with plants? I mean, you have to know that you have to have. You were talking about you overestimate what you can do in the short term and underestimate what you can do. You can do in the long term. That's what a garden is. That's what growing. You're a farmer. You know this. That's what growing things is like. It seems that you can sit there and watch them, but they don't grow right in front of you while you're sitting there. But over time, there's this huge growth. And, so I just wanted to throw the...
Well, Martin, will you come and talk to my tomato plants? Because they didn't do anything this year.
Did your squirrels? Our squirrels?
No, because I have that Aussie. I have that Aussie that chases all the squirrels out of the yard. But no, you come and talk to my tomato plants for me.
I'm thinking, I sometimes, like for my letters of the editor, I take a metaphor and work it. And I'm thinking, gardening and then pests. What do you do about what are the educational pests that you need to keep away from your plants? Thank you. I'll use that.
Is that the next episode?
I was just going to say that's next week's episode. Educational pests and what you can do about it.
Okay. I'll come back for that one. Just get me started.
That's right.
What's the educational equivalent of a squirrel?
Oh, well, this has been a fantastic discussion. Ending on the note of squirrels.
That's correct. Why not?
Why not? Oh, thank you for joining us. We will be back next time. Thanks for joining us today on Classical, Etc. by Memoria Press. If you like what you heard, please like, subscribe, or share this episode or comment. We love to hear your questions and your comments. If you want to learn more about Memoria Press, please go to memoriapress.com. This has been Classical, Etc. We're so glad you joined us, and we'll see you next time.